The Black Knight satellite, that's a fun one. It's an ancient alien probe orbiting Earth, maybe.
Has it been sent from the future? What is it? Where is it from? And why is it here?
Let's find out. A mysterious object orbiting Earth above our atmosphere, man-made with no earthly origins. It's the Black Knight satellite, an alien surveillance device used to monitor Earth for the past 13,000 years, or so they say. The device was first detected by Nikola Tesla in 1899 and then by Marconi and Jorgen Hals a few years later, and it was confirmed in the early 20th century by amateur radio operators, and it was first reported in the news in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Apparently, the satellite is not only a monitoring device deployed by aliens to observe the going-ons of Earth, but supposedly, based on radio signals coming from the contraption, it also contains a map to a faraway planet called Epsilon Bootis. Nice. While some skeptics have claimed the object to be nothing more than just a piece of old space junk, it should be noted that space junk doesn't exhibit many of the properties exhibited by the Black Knight satellite, especially sending out distinguishable and decodable radio signals.
This next question that's probably on your mind is, why is it here? And if you're not so sold on the alien thing, well, where could it be from then? Well, there are tons of possibilities, from something as boring as space junk, which is what NASA claims, to more outlandish but interesting ideas like a time capsule from the future. This idea is very Star Trek-y, but let's just imagine, if you will, for a moment that our future selves, hundreds or even thousands of years from now, have figured out how to send messages or artifacts back in time. Well, maybe the Black Knight satellite is one of these time capsules. Perhaps it could be carrying important info or advanced technology that could help us in the very near future. Maybe it has the solution to climate change, or a cure for some major disease that's coming in the very near future, or new energy sources. If we could crack the code, who knows how much it could boost our progress. What if the satellite is more like a history book, preserving our achievements and mistakes for future generations? This way, even if a disaster strikes, our story wouldn't be lost forever. The idea is kinda like sending a message in a bottle, of course, just way more high tech. And yeah, there's no real proof of this, but if things did get crappy enough in the distant future that we decided we needed to change the course of history, I mean, why wouldn't we try to send some kind of signal back in time if we had the ability to do so?
As I mentioned, the object was first discovered by Nikola Tesla, the inventor of the Tesla coil, in 1899 in Colorado Springs. Tesla had built a large tower to see if he could detect any going-ons in the atmosphere, and he did. Kind of. When the tower first began receiving transmissions, composed of numbers at regular intervals, he assumed that they were coming from the atmosphere, but it didn't take him long to realize that they were actually coming from above our atmosphere in space. He was quoted in a local paper saying, "I believe numbers are being used for communication because numbers are universal." A few years later, Marconi, the inventor of the wireless radio, intercepted the same signals, and a few years after that, a Norwegian engineer observed something as well. Jorgen Hals noticed that the transmissions coming from the object, sent out on a certain wavelength, were somehow being sent back to where they originated from a few seconds later, which isn't that weird. I mean, radio echoes aren't unheard of, but what was weird was the timing. You see, generally radio echoes are consistent and take place just a few seconds after the original signal hits its destination, but these ones were different. They were inconsistent, and some took up to 15 seconds to bounce back. The signals became known as long delayed echoes, or LDE, a phenomenon observed many times over the years that is still yet to be explained.
So in 1973, Scottish researcher and author Duncan Lunnon claimed to have discovered messages from a supposed alien probe. Lunnon analyzed those long-delayed radio echoes, which are strange signals bouncing back to Earth with that delay, and he thought these echoes contained a hidden message from an extraterrestrial probe orbiting Earth, the Black Knight. Lunnon's theory was that the satellite was sending a star map, pinpointing the Epsilon Bootis star system, and according to him, this message was from an alien civilization trying to communicate with us. According to him, the message went as follows. Start here. Our home is in Epsilon Bootis, which is a double star. We live on the 6th planet of 7 coming from the Sun, which is the larger of the two. Our 6th planet has 1 moon. Our 4th planet has 3. Our 1st and 3rd planets each have 1. Our probe is in the position of Arcturus, known in our maps.
So A couple of guys found some irregular radio signals coming from space. So what? Well, this what? On May 14th of 1954, 3 years prior to Sputnik becoming the first satellite in orbit, newspapers received a story from Major Donald Keyhoe, a Marine Corps major, naval aviator, and future founder of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, or NICAP. Keyhoe told the papers that there were already one or possibly even two non-organic satellites already orbiting Earth. After the story broke, a group of government scientists began attempting to track the objects, when they came across radio signals that matched the description of the ones Tesla had found back in 1899. After that, NASA located the signal and France confirmed it. Years later, after Sputnik's deployment, the US began to worry if the signals might have been coming from a Russian spy satellite, but in 1957 that theory was disproved when a researcher from Venezuela noticed a mysterious object while observing Sputnik in its prograde orbit, west to east, along with the rotation of the Earth. This object was orbiting in retrograde, east to west, opposite the rotation of the Earth, which was technology that hadn't been invented yet, leading them to believe it must not have been made on Earth.
So this is said to be the first photographic evidence of the Black Knight, captured in 1998 during the STS-88 mission. It's a pretty fantastic image, not just because it's breathtaking, which it absolutely is, but because of how clear it is. There's an object floating through space here, clear as day. STS-88 was NASA's first space shuttle mission to the International Space Station. During the mission, astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour captured a series of photographs that some believe show the mysterious Black Knight satellite. Now, a lot of people were very excited when these photos were released. Just what the hell was this thing? Were we really looking at a genuine UFO? Well, NASA kinda crashed the party. They just said the object was a thermal blanket that had come loose during a spacewalk, and sure, this was a letdown to some. To others, it didn't change anything. To people who believe in the satellite's mysterious origins, the thermal blanket story is just another cover-up.
Here's another. Of course, when it comes to the subject of an alien satellite that the general public has not yet been made explicitly aware of, there is obviously going to be a number of cover-ups involved. In this case, the cover-up of the research conducted by and presented to the Observatory of Paris by Jacques Valee, who is still alive today and still incredibly passionate about the subject of the Black Knight satellite. Over the course of his career, Jacques observed, tracked, photographed, and even filmed the massive 15-ton satellite that, at the time, no rocket on Earth would have been able to deploy. When he was satisfied with the amount of evidence he had gathered, he presented his findings to the observatory for publishing. In response to his presentation, the observatory promptly confiscated his files, erased all of his photos, and destroyed his tapes. Their reason? They were embarrassed because they could not definitively say what the object was, nor could they source its exact origin. I smell BS.
That was me, by the way. I gotta hit the bathroom after this. So dumb. What if the Black Knight isn't from the future at all, but the exact opposite, the distant past, launched by our ancient ancestors using advanced technology, a lost civilization like Atlantis or some other unknown empire that had tech as good as or even better than ours? They might have sent the object up for all sorts of reasons, but the one that's most intriguing to me is that the Black Knight satellite could be a sort of time capsule containing sacred artifacts or even DNA from a highly advanced ancient civilization that knew it was on the decline, or maybe they encoded messages in it to warn future generations about their mistakes to prevent suffering the same fate down the line. Yeah, I get it, sounds like a great plot for a movie, but completely improbable. Improbable, sure, but not impossible. History may have many more secrets than we know.
If you're still not convinced about the existence of the Black Knight satellite, you should know that in 1963, an Air Force test and fighter pilot and astronaut, along with NASA ground crew and tracking stations, actually saw, documented, and reported it during a space mission, only to quickly rescind the claim and instead cover up the fact that the object ever existed. In 1963, Gordan Cooper, an experienced pilot, became one of the first astronauts to go to space. In April April of that year, he boarded the Mercury 9, and shortly after, he was living his anti-gravity dreams over 6,214 miles above the Earth's surface. During his descent back down to Earth, the landing module suffered from a total systems failure, but luckily, Gordan was able to land the spacecraft manually just 4 miles off target. That's pretty impressive. But believe it or not, that was not actually the most interesting thing to happen on the mission. While in space, Gordan had seen a green glowing object that ground crew and tracking stations confirmed. Not only that, but the object appeared to have been orbiting the Earth in retrograde, east to west. Unheard of technology at the time. NBC News picked up the story, but by the time Gordan made it back to Earth, the press was restricted from asking any questions about what he had seen, and NASA had released a statement claiming that an electrical malfunction had caused high levels of carbon dioxide in the ship's compartment, and that Gordan had hallucinated the whole thing. For years, Cooper went along with the narrative, that is, until he retired and decided to spill the tea. He claimed that what he and the ground crew saw during the Mercury 9 mission was in fact real, and not only that, but during his time working for the Air Force, he had witnessed hundreds of saucer-shaped spacecrafts being tested on military bases. I guess loyalty to liars in government can only last for so long.
Now, I'm sure we'd all love to believe that the Black Knight is something cool, like an object sent from the future or an alien probe as discussed before, or even a mundane thing like a piece of space junk if you're more nervous about that sort of thing. But could there be something more nefarious going on? Always, right? Maybe it's part of some secret government project. I mean, think about it. During the Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union were in a high-stakes race for technological and military superiority. It's entirely possible that one of these countries, or even another government, could have launched a covert satellite. And yes, as Hannah mentioned, it was supposedly first spotted long before the Cold War, but most of the attention to the Black Knight came in the 50s and 60s, so who knows if something else had been detected in the years prior. If the Black Knight is a government project, it could be used for all sorts of secret missions. It might be collecting intelligence, it could be monitoring communications, or even conducting space experiments that the public doesn't know about. Governments often keep advanced technology under wraps, and the Black Knight could be one of these hidden tools. This idea is definitely a much more down-to-earth explanation compared to time capsules or ancient tech, so I mean, who knows? Aside from space junk, this may be the next most possible explanation.
Do you believe in the Black Knight?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, I do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I think there could be something floating around up there.
I buy
You know?
it, yeah.
I don't know if it's an alien probe, but I hope.
Or something. Cool.
All right, well, let us know your thoughts down below, and we will catch you in the next video.